I don't know what's on my face, man. Here's something that the disgusting shooting of Mr. Kirk demonstrates that I don't really see anyone else talking about, and something that I've been talking about, which is this childish gun culture that we have in this country. Now, I want to make a separation. There's some people who just like guns. We all have our hobbies. I'm into motorcycles. Some people would say that's stupid. It's dangerous. You don't have any airbags and whatever and whatnot. But it's my thing. I like motorcycles, right? But I'm not a freak about it, right? A lot of these gun nuts are gun nuts. They're freaks. They're not just people who just happen to like guns, right? They're freaks. Um, Case in point, we have this what's his name, Reaper guy, former army sniper, and he once he recently told a story about how he goes to the beach with like an MP5 and some other gun. Now this guy doesn't live in Gaza. He doesn't live in like Somalia or something like that. And he's former military, so I mean, I guess unless it's like on some, PTSD type stuff, that would be the only logical justification for why someone that has been exposed to what he has can't and is as capable as he is can't just go to the beach and relax. He has to not just have. And the thing is, it's not like he just has one gun. He needs an MP5 and whatever. Like, what are we talking about here? Back to the shooting. So Charlie Kirk supposedly, and I say supposedly because I don't know what his beliefs are. I don't know what his were. I don't know what his ideology was. He was in American media, which is very dishonest, whether it's right wing, left wing, mainstream media, especially independent. Most of these guys are playing characters, especially somebody like Charlie Kirk. So I don't know anything about what he believed in. But his rhetoric, if we go by his rhetoric, he was pro, Second Amendment. He definitely had a security detail. There were definitely a lot of people there that were pro guns. I'm pretty sure someone there was carrying more than a few people were carrying. What good did it do Charlie Kirk? This is something I've talked about before, right? We have this childish culture, and I will admit, just because this is what it's like to be an adult, I'm a grown ass adult, right? So I'm in touch with the reality of my weaknesses and the good, the bad, and the ugly about myself, and I will admit there's a small part of me that shares this childish thing. Maybe it's being ex-military, whatever it is, but I'm just much more adult about it, right? I'm not like the typical, I'm not a gun nut. I don't really even like guns. I don't feel the need that I need to have a gun everywhere. You look at January 6th with these guys were dressed up like they were, Delta Force or whatever, and there's not much contrast between that and imagine a bunch of, 12-year-old boys. They go in and watch a movie with their favorite action hero and with their guns and brrr, and then they that's badass, man, and then they want to emulate their superheroes on TV, and then they wear like costumes, right, and dress up and try to pretend like I'm a badass, whatever, right? Um, but a lot of these guys, and especially this type of mindset, is really common in MAGA. Like I've always said, MAGA is a very juvenile movement. It attracts a lot of overgrown boys, right? You don't see a lot of masculine men in MAGA, right? What you do see is there is masculinity, but it's like 17-year-old masculinity, right? You look at the angry patriot, right? He's a perfect, sort of avatar of the movement, right? Literally calls himself angry patriot, and he gets his face red faced, and he's always right. That is a form of masculinity. That's a 13-year-old. Someone stepped on your shoe or there's something really minor, and you're gonna go crazy. You're walking with your girlfriend. Somebody looks at your girlfriend. Now you're gonna go punch him in the face and show him who's boss, right? That's that juvenile mindset, and that's very, very prominent in MAGA, right? But these same people, they're so childish, just like again these kids who like I was, right? I'll tell you a story. I was so much into Superman. Um, I always thought it was my sister. I guess my mother made me a Superman cape, and I took it to school. It was elementary, and I used to jump off the back of our porch. I don't know how high the porch was, but I didn't have any injuries. I would jump off, And legitimately, in my mind, legitimately, not just imagination or whatever, I had this feeling that if I really believed, and I want to where, can you imagine where I might get these kind of ideas from? But anyway, if I really believed hard enough that I could actually fly, it was just a matter of belief. This is what I was thinking in elementary school, right? I had that Superman cape and I was gonna fly, right? But you have grown ass men in their 20s, their 30s, 40s, 50s, and even potentially older than that who have that same kind of mindset even as a grown ass adult, right? So they believe that they can go to the range, long enough and have a big enough and loud enough gun, have enough guns. I got 50 guns in my house and there's one under my bed and one here and one over there. And they really, really, like, it's this childlike mentality, think that they're superheroes, right? Because you see in the movies, right? You have one guy take out 20 men, right? These same guys would look at those movies and perhaps mock them and say that's so fake. But yet they act as if they believe that that's really a thing because they think they're the ultimate badass, right? Anybody mess with my family, blah, 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 right? All it took was one bullet. Charlie Kirk didn't even see it coming. Every single one of these guys who are in this gun culture, the same rules apply to them, right? No one has eyes behind their heads. And even the most paranoid person, like this sniper guy who goes to the beach with the MP5 or whatever, I know his head's not on a swivel 24/7, right? I presume he's a little bit more vigilant than most people, as I am, right? But this is real life, man. Nobody has a capacity to just 24/7 have your head on a swivel. And I gotta say, a lot of these people are supposedly people of faith, right? At least that's what they claim online. I doubt many of these people go to church except for holidays, but regardless. I was brought up deeply religious, and from the way I was taught, you're supposed to live a righteous life and have your heart right with God to the point that you're not so much worried about your time coming, right? Because when it's your time, you're going to be rewarded, with heaven and all that kind of stuff. And that's something you look forward to, meeting up with your other relatives. I'm not saying you're going to want to die, but considering all the positives, I would think a person of faith wouldn't really go beyond just normal common sense. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to be in a bad neighborhood. You're going to have decent situational awareness and things like that. You're going to use your judgment about certain things. But the idea that you need to be fully armed with like multiple guns and all this, I just don't see how a person of faith could live their life that way. And it's one thing if you just have a gun, you just want to have it. But again, the obsession and again, going to the beach with an MP5. Yeah. At some point in time, all these guys relax in a moment, with their family, kids, whatever it is they're doing, laughing with the boys, get drunk even. So now you're really not even. And you gotta think, if you're so like paranoid and all this kind of stuff, you can't ever drink, right? Because once you drink, everything is off the table, right? You can't. Your aim is off. Your reaction time is off. You're an easy target, right? So what's the point of all these guns and all this training and all this badass whatever? And now you're gonna go get drunk. But all these guys, not all of them literally, but most of these guys, they get drunk, right? They drink and impair. Now, I personally, right, I don't get drunk, and I haven't actually drank alcohol most of my life. I would say at this point, maybe 90% of my life was alcohol free. But even now, when I drink, it's hardly ever, and I've never been drunk in my life. But I'm pretty sure most of these badass gun nuts, they get drunk, right? And perhaps while carrying, which that's a whole other story. The person who think they're the biggest and baddest and who has the most guns and they've got their steroids or whatever, they're big and strong, and they could be the most vigilant person ever. But before you walk out of your house every day, do you look out the window at every vehicle and take note of the vehicles and the ones you recognize and the ones you don't, and linger a little bit, risking being late for work to see if you catch any shadows? And is that like Hollywood, right? Is that what you're doing? Because if you're not, with all the guns and whatever, the minute you step out the door, somebody's trying to get you, right? That's got a camera on their car and they can see you, right? They're out of sight, tinted windows or whatever it is. And then So as you step out, they see you and they're ready for you. You're not ready for them, right? You think you are in your mind, but you're not ready for them. They're ready for you. So as you step out your house, boom, that's it, right? All that badass and guns and I got this and I got that and whatever, protect my family and do. All that stuff is irrelevant. Um, the reality is, the idea. Now I'm not against like trying to protect yourself and being resilient. I'm 100% for that. But I think people take it too far in terms of how far they think that can go. The odds of the superhero situation where you happen to have a gun and you happen to see the person in time and whatever, like that's not really how it's gonna go down a lot of times, right? Um, so like I always talk about all those other threats that you ignore, right? It's not a rational thing we're talking about. People say I'd rather have a gun and not need it than need a gun and not have it, right? But they don't say I'd rather have a life vest and not need it than have a life than needing a life vest and not have it. I am driving across the bridge, right? Um, I saw a guy in the back of a jet ski with no life vest. He's standing up. There was like already two guys on there, and he's standing up on the back. And I don't know the guy, but I could see tons of these gun nuts doing it, right? There's no, they don't apply the same logic. Are these people all driving vehicles that have all the latest safety technology? And if their favorite vehicle doesn't have it, are they buying it third party, all the blind spot protection and the pre-braking and all this kind of stuff? Are they installing crash cages in their personal vehicles? Do they have fire extinguishers in their vehicles? Is it I'd rather have a fire extinguisher and not need it than need a fire extinguisher and not have it? Like, why are guns in particular the thing that is glorified on TV with these movies that these guys watched as kids, and as adults they're still like caught up, right? Your favorite movie or character on TV, right? They're badass Punisher, right? All the guns and I'm taking out, right? Is it a coincidence that the thing that you see in your movies and shows, that's the thing that you focus on, right? In another universe where instead of guns, the focus is on like firemen, right? Would these guys be like fire extinguisher nuts? And they'd have like, I have a mini one and I have an extra one and I actually carry a fire suit in my bag. Like, if the superheroes of our time were like firemen, like all the blockbuster movies was about some fireman who takes out a fire or whatever, and crazy situations where somehow a guy spilled some alcohol next to the fridge and the fridge motor started up and it sparked, and a fire could happen at any time, at any moment, right? If that was all the Hollywood movies, right, would these gun nuts not have the guns but instead have a bunch of fire extinguishers, right? What if all the action heroes, the tough guys in the movies portrayed, were like really big on automotive safety, right? Their whole thing is how so many crashes, like it's a series about a guy who just keeps ending up in crashes, and he survives because he has a crash cage and he has this and he has that, he has all the supplies and whatever, right? And the bad guys try to get him and sabotage his car, but he's got the crash cage, he's got the whatever, right? If those are the superheroes, with these grown ass men, would they all be driving around with the most secure cars with like metal cages on the outside, like Mad Max type? Is that what they would look like? I mean, you could be sitting in your living room watching a TV and a car smashes through the window. That's just actually happened, right? Do these same guys, the gun nuts, do they have their walls to their homes reinforced? Any street-facing wall, they have it reinforced with rebar or whatever it is. They have a crash wall. Or is it just guns, right? Is it only guns? And if it's just guns that they have this level of obsession with, then maybe it's just that, an obsession. It is a sickness. It is a form of a cult. And it's not really about protecting your family and the police take too long and you gotta, maybe all that stuff is stuff that very wealthy people have put in your brains so you can buy their products, right? It takes a good guy with a gun to stop a bad guy with a gun, like all these taglines, right? Because that's the same thing that would happen if we're in that universe where firemen are heroes, right? The fire extinguisher companies would monopolize that, and they would have these slogans about, only a fool doesn't have a personal fire extinguisher, or something obviously would sound slicker than that, right? And these same gun nuts will be talking about, I'd rather have a fire extinguisher and not need it than have one. I'm sorry, I'd rather have a fire extinguisher and not need it than need one and not have it. Like, that's what they would be saying, right? It takes a good guy with a fire extinguisher to put out a fire started by a bad guy, or what? You know what I mean? Like, man, that famous line in the movie, "You can't handle the truth." Can these gun nuts handle the truth that they're basically sheep that have been manipulated by gun manufacturers and other people and politicians into this cult of obsessive, gun, and then they try to pretend like it's not. Oh, we just like hunting and this and that. No, man, we've gone far beyond hunting. There are people in other countries that love hunting, and they're not having a million guns, and they don't have this crazy gun culture that we have, right? They have their guns, and when they go hunting, and that's it, right? They don't have to do videos with guns in the background and wear gun shirts and you know what I mean? Like, um, I absolutely love motorcycles, right? But you don't see me walking around with like motorcycle shirts and you know what I mean? And I have a million motorcycles and pictures of motorcycles on my wall and all this kind of stuff. I love it, dude. Like, I'll be talking to somebody about who knows what, and I hear a bike in the background go around, coming down the street, and it catches my attention. I'm like, I gotta see what bike this is, you know. I really love bikes, but I'm not in a bike cult, right? I don't need a million bikes. I don't even need, like a lot of people, social riders. I don't need to ride with people, right? I ride motorcycles because I enjoy riding motorcycles. I don't need companies. Cool to ride with other people, but I don't care about that because it's not for social. I'm not going to be hanging out. People go riding and they go hang out. I'm not trying to be seen, right? It's just something I enjoy doing, right? And if you weren't a gun nut, right, even if you had a bunch of guns, nobody might even know about it because they don't need to know about it because it's like, what does it have to do with them, right? If it's something that you're really doing for yourself, you wouldn't need to advertise it so much, right? With your "don't tread on me" flags and all this kind of nonsense. So again, every single one of us, the unfortunate reality is that there's nothing you can do. If somebody wants to get you, they can get you. You can get as tough as you want, have as many guns as you want. Anybody can get taken out. That's just a reality. Fortunately, the reality of this life in this country is that even with all the mass shootings, you're extremely unlikely to be involved in a situation where you need a gun in the first place. I have lived almost 50 years. I've lived in multiple bad neighborhoods with high crime. East Boston back in the day when it was bad, Flatbush, Brooklyn, even in the Bronx when it was really, really bad. And I don't know a single person who has been robbed, who has been killed. I don't know a single person who knows a single person who's been robbed or killed. All the deaths that I know about, ironically, are motorcycles. And otherwise from my childhood, because unfortunately I was hanging around some very violent people, and pretty much all of them are dead or in jail. But as an adult, in all these bad areas, high crime areas, whatever, nothing, right? There were two exceptions that I didn't mention, and ironically, that was in Boston. I got chased home one night. I was walking home. I felt like a guy was following me. See, even then, I was very attentive, right? So I did pick up on, situational awareness. I picked up on this person that was behind, and they seemed to be, I don't know, something caught my attention about them. Somebody behind me, right? So I'm definitely paying attention because I noticing someone behind me, right? And I did a couple of tactics to try and suss out what was going on. At one point in time, I crossed the street, and I started moving faster. They started moving faster. Then I was like, okay. Nothing became of it because I was out of there. Other than that, so that's a non-incident, right? I had to include a non-incident just to try to include something going on. And by the way, crime is significantly lower than it was back then, right? Consider that for a second. I went through some much higher crime times, and even then I didn't see anything. So the only one real thing that I experienced was the store I worked at got robbed in Boston area. It was robbed by knife point. The guy came in and took a bunch of computers. And that's it, right? Now, I'm sure everybody who has experienced something, because, these things do happen, is going to comment and say, well, you've just been lucky and, I actually got robbed or whatever. Oh, actually, I forgot. There was a lot of robbery. See, again, childhood. So my childhood is one exception because you know what? In my childhood, I actually grew up in areas that were actually as violent as American media pretends that things are in this country, with few exceptions, right? There are some small pockets in America that are really, really bad, right? But overall, Things are nowhere near as dangerous as the media presents them, and they're making money doing this. The YouTubers are making money, the right wingers are making money. Like these guys are making money presenting this scary image. But I grew up in actual real violence. I have a real perspective, right? I was born in the murder capital of the world, and in that capital, multiple of my family members were involved in home invasion, robberies. Fortunately, no one was killed, but home invasions. We left from that area to go somewhere else. And in that area, our home got broken into multiple times. So they kept stealing our TV. Um, so I was born in an actual violent area. We moved away because of the violence to another area, which wasn't as violent, but it was violent as well. My junior high school was violent. My high school was even more so violent. I mean, kids fighting police officers. That was my experience. But once I came to the United States, right, because crime is so low compared to what it used to be in the 80s or 70s and when it was really, really bad. By the time I got here, America was, and specifically New York City, was a pretty safe place to live. The kind of place where a police officer can, NYPD average officer doesn't use their gun their entire career, right? That was shocking when I found that out. It's even shocking now because I'm human, and all the stuff I hear, it affects me, just like it affects many of you guys. You have this perception of police officers, every day chasing after bad guys, and yeah, it's stuff you see on the news. The reason it's on the news is because it's the exception. It's something, right? Something you see some cop getting shot or something like that. That's so rare that it's a big story. That's why they're talking about it, right? If it was a normal thing, they wouldn't really report on it that much because it'd be kind of like, oh, okay, another cop gets shot. Like, who cares, right? So you got to look at it that way, right? The outliers are going to be the things that are going to draw the most views, and therefore they're going to talk about the most on the news. Anyway, America has a very childish gun culture problem, and none of these people are going to realize they're not going to realize the flaw in their thinking looking at what happened to Charlie Kirk, which tragic for his family, shall we say. Tragic for anyone that loved him. Certainly not tragic for the country.